Question to the parents out there. Is it finally time to take homeschooling into your own hands? And here's what I mean by this. When I look at my experience in the school system, I graduated in the early O's, and Josh, you just got out, what, three years ago, right? From other buddies back in Houston, who've just finished in the past, 1 or 2 years. And the takeaway is that the more and more I hear from the younger generations that are coming up, the more and more I'm just appalled. And I guess being appalled with the schooling system or government in general, that's probably just part of American life, but it seems to be getting to the point where it's extreme. I've got a good friend, lives up in Dallas. He, his wife, and they've got a kid. And when I just hear the stories of what's coming out of a decent school system, or let's say an above average, public school system in the greater Dallas area, I'm just scratching my head and saying, like, this is ridiculous. Number one, it's ridiculous. We have to pay taxes for it, but that's a separate video. The bigger picture on this front is that, like, look, if you're a man and a wife, and you have a kid, this is arguably the most important thing that you guys, have in your charge right now. And then it becomes where we're entrusting, that is, we as a society are entrusting our children to public or private education, but essentially education that's maybe serving to indoctrinate children into beliefs, ideas, and let's just say precepts that aren't inherently in their best interest, that is in the child's interest, let alone the society's best interest. And to be clear, like, I don't necessarily have a solution from this. I have no kids, maybe one day. So I don't necessarily have a direct dog in the fight as a parent, but I do have a dog in the fight as a member of society that needs the society to reproduce itself in a functional manner. And I just can't but help think that whether you go to private education, as I went through a lot of my time, or you go through public education, I think both of it, again, from what I'm hearing, is becoming to the point of being unsalvageable. So that's the bad news. But here's the good news, Josh. I don't want to give out names here, but you and I both know someone that is a couple. They have more than one, they have more than two kids, and they've made the commitment to homeschool their children. And when you look at the results of this, it's been top-notch, phenomenal in terms of what's been happening. And so, kind of, this is the question I wanted to pose to you, and any other parents that are in the audience is, what's the deal with homeschooling? I know there are definitely some drawbacks. There's the time commitment, there's the socialization aspect of that, and so on and so forth. But when I'm looking at the results, just from my very, very small experience, both bad from what I've seen from public and private, and good from what I've seen, in direct experience that I directly have seen, from others, I just can't but help think this might be a huge part of the solution to go forward.
There are a few main issues that I see with the current school system, and I think my generation was the first to kind of see it. The first one is the victim mentality and the everyone gets a trophy award. Because I remember very, very vividly back in the day, this was a direct thing. I remember very, very vividly, I would draw a piece of shit, and the girl next to me would draw the best looking painting I've ever seen in my entire life. And then our parents would come in and we'd all get the same trophy. And I asked my mom, hey, why the hell do I get the same trophy as this girl? She did way better than me. And I remember my mom said, well, yeah, she did do way better than you, suck, doofus. And the teacher said, hey, that's not nice. Everybody gets the same trophy because we're all the same. I'm like, no, we're not all the same. That is feasibly not incorrect. If me and her raced, I would blow her out in a race, and I should be rewarded for that. If me and her were going to draw and she can draw way better than me, she should be rewarded for that.
Yeah. Let me just, I think what you did is that you've got to bring back in the moral imperative to discriminate. And here's what I mean by discriminate. Example: when Susie goes to the grocery store to select vegetables for her family, she only selects the very best. She is a very discriminating customer in the sense that you're able to tell, what's better or worse. And that's not to say that you're making a moral judgment about someone, but in the case of the art thing, or let's say, like, you're in swim class or doing a track meet or whatever, right? Fine. Everyone might get a t-shirt. I'm not saying people can't have something like, here's something for trying, but, like, you kind of want to have, like, this tier thing where you say, like, well, listen, you were number one, you were number two, and you're number three. And I think this is, where this nuance gets lost on a lot of things. And I'm not trying to say one should be mean to someone or intentionally be mean to someone, but it is no kindness to overshelter a child from the realities of life, because sooner or later the realities of life are going to come back and pick up. Some things I really agree with Jordan Peterson on, some things I really disagree with him on, but this is one of the things that I do agree with him very much on, where it is when you have, like, a suffocating, overprotective mother. What does he call it? There's some fancy way that Peterson can talk about it. helicopter, but there's some like philosophical way. I think it's like well, whatever. I'm going to screw it up if I try. But my point though is that like as a parent or whatever, right? Like you want your sons or your daughters, to be able to be competent, stand in the world themselves, and theoretically have sons and daughters of their own that they can have sons and daughters of their own and down the line. And sure, you might want what's best for them, but I would argue, and I say this, cautiously because I have no kids myself, but like you don't necessarily want to make your life too easy for your kid, nor do you want to make your life too hard for your kid. And I don't know where the correct way is in the middle of those two paths to walk, but I think it's something people need to be cognizant of. And I think we kind of have lost track of that, maybe out of inherent kindness, but it's a kindness that's become a cruelty when you really think about it.
Yes, so that's one of the issues I see with the school system, but that is one of the things that don't actually matter too much. Something else that actually it has a huge impact on your kid's life is what's going on with the grooming in a lot of these schools. I remember when I was in school, especially in my younger days, at my household, at school, at football practice, there was no talk of any sort of politics. That was just an off subject issue. Same thing with gender, or well, that wasn't even a thing actually.
It was two things: you're either a guy or a girl. No problem with that.
Nobody talked about politics, and nobody talked about a lot of these other issues, or trying to convince someone if they are a man or a woman, or if they are gay or straight, or if white people are bad or good, or racism. None of this was real. There was
Learned
no
helplessness.
Yeah, there was nothing like this that was talked about. Therefore, nobody categorized themselves as somebody, and every single person was just a person. And now every single person is being categorized as what their discrimination level is using the recent term that we are going.
Victimhood Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is fucking crazy. I don't even know what to think of it because it is just such a bizarro world that the kids are living in. And I don't want to raise children in a society that is prioritizing these types of developments. That is not the characteristics that I think are important when you're trying to think, is this person good or bad based upon their discriminatory victimhood gold standard?
Yeah. I mean, like when you teach people to become victims, don't be surprised when you get a bunch of victims that are coming through. But I, well, anyways, my point is that the current system that we have, the more and more I hear about it, the more and more I'm disappointed by it. And salt on the wound is that we're taxed to pay for it, but again, separate video there. But again, it gets back to the thing. Okay, well, enough bitching about the problem. What are you going to do to solve the problem? Yeah, life sucks, etc. Grow up. And I would say I think the homeschooling idea is a very interesting idea, and I don't necessarily know if it's the final answer on that, but it certainly seems like a good place to start. And again, like if I suddenly had multiple children that I was suddenly in charge of, which I don't anticipate having. But the point is, if I suddenly became a parent, through fate and circumstance, and I had to make decisions on that, probably I would have one of my number one goals would be looking at ways to find other like-minded parents who were disappointed and disgusted with the current education system, both public and private, and seeing, okay, well, listen, what are the options we have to basically provide our own level of education free from all of the toxic lies that are being pushed off as truth in the current system.
Yeah, that's actually the exact same solution that I've come to. And there are buddies that me and you both know, my friend Luke, and a few others that have met along the way who we have very similar values that we would like to push on children. And we were saying, hey, if when we are ready to settle down and have kids, we would like to move near each other and have a small tribe and community of people like us who all want to raise kind of our children in a similar manner, to provide the values that we think are important towards them. And I think we are going to see this shift, and I think we are seeing it now, of the huge cities where everybody is kind of concentrated and learning the same thing, to where we will have more smaller communities kind of on the outskirts where people are trying to push values onto children, because that is the most important job any parent can ever have.
Yeah, and let me just put some more context to that. It's like a child wants to have values pushed onto them because they're hungry. They want to learn. They're impressionable, as you said earlier. This is important, and so therefore it's equally as important for adults, teachers, mentors, whatever, in order to give the child the correct values. Like this is why I like Bloom so much, where he talks about a child growing up from, let's say, like kindergarten through higher education. He uses the analogy of like a plant that's sprouting. So it starts as a little like few green leaves as they come above the thing and then grow and grow and grow. And to paraphrase Bloom, or what I think Bloom was trying to say is, it's the job of the educator, the parent, the mentor, whatever, to give the plant the correct sustenance, the sunlight, the water in proper proportions, the plant food, and so on and so forth, so the plant can grow and develop and whatever on. But when you start trying to groom the plant and trim off its leaves and bend it or whatever, right? Like, no, you're not letting the plant do what it's trying to do, or you're trying to get the plant to turn it against itself. Like this is very destructive for the plant. Again, I may be stretching the analogy, but you see where I'm going with this. And I think that's the sin that's being committed right now under the guise of morality, which is disappointing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the people who can't have children today, aka the third genders, the fourths, they are the ones that are, I would say, infiltrating and becoming the teachers of the children. And
Yeah.
would you want someone who can never be a parent and chose that? They chose that they can never be a parent, be the one that is teaching your kids. I'm not saying that's bad or
or
good.
or leading your country. Just a side note, don't do this now, separate video, but look at how many European politicians, high-ranking European politicians, look at how many of them have children and how many of them don't have children. Back on topic. Sorry, Josh.
I do think homeschooling is vital. I have met a few parents who homeschooled their kids, and before I knew that those kids were homeschooled, I remember having full-blown adult conversations with these kids, and I was blown away. It's like, holy smokes, these are some of the smartest, most intellectual, highly educated kids I've ever met in my entire life. And then I later came to find out that they were homeschooled, and this is multiple families that have no relation to each other whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think that is fantastic, because there were no alternatives 20 years ago if you didn't want to send your kids to school. Well, there were, but you would have been just teaching them pretty much nothing. Now, because of online, you can literally have any educational system. You could have the entire Harvard course sent to your 8-year-old child if you want to. Obviously, I don't think that would be a little pushing it, but you could
Time
do
and a
it.
place. Time and a place. Yeah. Yeah.